Hello everyone, I'm Nikki Newman, and today we're back with another exciting storyline. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. The Young and the Restless Spoilers Recap Wednesday, full episodes the 11th of March 2026. Nikki yelled at Victor when she learned he was holding Jack captive, demanding his release. But even with all that history, hearing that Victor was actually responsible for Jack's disappearance was something she could hardly accept. Nikki had always supported Victor in every fight, but this was kidnapping a rival, an act that could land Victor in jail. Genoa had witnessed countless confrontations over the years, but kidnapping someone like Jack Abbott crossed a dangerous line, potentially shattering more lives than Victor was willing to admit. Nikki only wanted what was best for Victor. She didn't care about anything else. She insisted this wasn't a clever business trick or a strategic game between rivals. It was a crime, and it would only create chaos for everyone involved. Victor tried to comfort Nikki, saying he knew his limits and wouldn't cross them. That silence only angered Nikki further. She demanded that he release Jack immediately, insisting that whatever argument he was trying to prove had gone too far. But Victor remained unmoved. Victor was jealous and thought Nikki was too indulgent with Jack, so they argued again. That answer only deepened Nikki's frustration because she knew exactly what it meant. Victor had made his decision, and once Victor Newman had made his own decision, changing it was almost impossible. Meanwhile, Patty called Victor and he answered. She had spent time observing Jack while he was imprisoned, and despite everything that had happened between them in the past, she seemed strangely calm. Patty had a request and hoped that Victor would agree. Patty would end Jack and Victor's war by getting him out of Genoa. Do you think Jack would disappear with a new love? Their feud had poisoned too many lives for too many years. For her, the only real way out was to get Jack far away from Genoa to a place where he could start over without the endless shadow of Victor Newman weighing on him. Victor listened carefully to Patty's arguments, though no one could be sure whether he was taking them seriously or simply letting her speak. Victor had always believed that power meant controlling the outcome of every situation. Making Jack disappear completely would certainly resolve the immediate conflict, but it would also mean relinquishing control over the final move in a feud that had shaped decades of his life. Chelsea and Adam were too weary of the pressures of life. They felt they had to leave. Their relationship had overcome betrayal, distance, and years of emotional pain, but rebuilding something real between them proved far more complicated than anticipated. Adam and Chelsea both have feelings for each other, but fear they won't be able to preserve that pure affection. There are days when they feel like they're finally moving forward cautiously, building something new from the ruins of past mistakes. But there are also days when the silence between them carries a heavy unease. Should they continue trying? Is the bond they share strong enough to weather the constant storms surrounding their families? Or are they simply clinging to something familiar because letting go is too terrifying? Neither of them has the answer. And in another distant place, far from Genoa, another piece of the puzzle is quietly beginning to move. Las Vegas dazzling with its usual restless energy, its neon lights concealing the dark stories that often unfold beneath the surface. It was here that Matt positioned himself far enough from Genoa to avoid immediate suspicion, but close enough to influence events that were beginning to spiral out of control. Noah also happened to be in Las Vegas, though he had no idea that his presence there could soon propel him down a path far more dangerous than he could imagine. The city was teeming with distractions, noise, and constant movement, creating the perfect environment for someone like Matt to operate. The penthouse in Genoa City was cloaked in the heavy, suffocating silence of the early morning hours. Adam Newman stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the slumbering city skyline, though his mind was 3 time zones away. Spread across the sleek mahogany surface of his desk were the fragmented pieces of a life he could barely remember, let alone understand. Faded photographs, redacted financial statements, and a single cryptic handwritten note that bore a Las Vegas postmark. The neon-soaked city of sin had always been a sanctuary for him during his darkest days, the place where he had shed the heavy burden of the Newman name to become the enigmatic high roller known only as Spider. But this time Adam wasn't running away to hide. He was going back to dig up the bones. He had secretly initiated an investigation into the missing gaps of his past, those shadowy months where his memories blurred into a violent, hazy mosaic. There was a secret buried in the Nevada desert, a phantom thread that kept pulling at his subconscious. Moving with deliberate, practiced caution, Adam packed a minimalist leather duffel bag. He left his primary smartphone, the one heavily encrypted but still entirely traceable by Newman Enterprises' vast surveillance network, on the nightstand. In its place, he slipped a prepaid burner phone into his jacket pocket. He had already booked a private, untraceable charter flight under one of his most deeply buried aliases. No one in Genoa City, not his siblings, not his lovers, and certainly not his father, could know about this journey. As he zipped the bag shut, a cold determination settled over him. Whatever truth lay waiting in the unforgiving heat of Vegas, Adam was finally ready to face it. Miles away on the sprawling, meticulously manicured grounds of the Newman Ranch, the fire in the main study crackled, casting dancing shadows across the imposing portrait of Victor Newman. The patriarch himself sat in his high-backed leather chair, a snifter of rare amber cognac resting loosely in his right hand. The room was a fortress of power, a testament to a man who controlled everything in his orbit. The heavy oak doors swung open, and O'Rourke, one of Victor's most trusted and discreet intelligence operatives, stepped into the dimly lit sanctuary. Victor O'Rourke began, his voice low, betraying the urgency of his late-night intrusion. He placed a slim, unmarked manila folder on the desk. We caught a blip on the radar. I was running the routine sweeps on the offshore accounts, monitoring the usual suspects when one of the old ghost aliases popped up, the one tied to the Bellagio high roller suites 3 years ago. Victor's eyes sharp and predatory as a hawk's narrowed. He set the cognac down with a soft, deliberate clink. Adam, he murmured the name, carrying a complex mixture of paternal frustration and deeply ingrained suspicion. Yes, Sir, O'Rourke confirmed. He just chartered a private flight out of a secondary airstrip. Destination McCarran International, Las Vegas. Victor slowly opened the folder, his gaze scanning the flight logs and the sparse data O'Rourke had managed to scrape together. A chilling realization washed over him, freezing the blood in his veins. Vegas. Of all the places on Earth, Adam was heading back to the one city that held the power to detonate the foundation of the Newman legacy. Victor remembered the lengths he had gone to in order to bury the sins of the past, the blood spilled, the massive sums of hush money wired through shell corporations, the meticulously crafted lies designed to protect his family. If Adam started turning over the wrong rocks in the desert, he would inevitably unearth a family secret so toxic it could destroy them all. He cannot be allowed to pursue this, Victor said, his voice dropping to a gravelly, dangerous register. The patriarch stood up, his imposing figure casting a long shadow across the Persian rug. Do you hear me, O'Rourke? Whatever my son thinks he is looking for, he must not find it. What are your orders? Victor O'Rourke asked, pulling a sleek tablet from his jacket to take down the directives. I want your best man on the ground in Nevada before his plane even touches the tarmac, Victor commanded, pacing the length of the study. Deploy the Alpha team. I want eyes on him the second he steps off that jet. Monitor his every move. Record every conversation. Photograph every lowlife he makes contact with. Victor paused, turning to face the operative with an icy glare that had brought titans of industry to their knees. But more importantly, you are to intervene the moment he gets too close to the truth, cut off his sources, buy out his informants, intimidate anyone who tries to sell him a piece of the past, and if necessary, step out of the shadows and physically stop him. I don't care what it costs, and I don't care how much you have to disrupt his life. You contain this situation, O'Rourke. The Newman family's survival depends on it. The oppressive dry heat of the Mojave Desert hit Adam the moment he stepped out of the air-conditioned terminal and into the waiting black town car. Las Vegas was a city of glittering illusions, a neon mirage designed to separate fools from their money, but Adam knew the real city. He knew the gritty, sun-bleached underbelly that existed far beyond the Bellagio fountains and the high-roller baccarat tables. His first stop was a dingy, smoke-stained dive bar situated on the outskirts of Fremont Street, a place where the slot machines still took dirty coins and the patrons looked like they had been sitting on the same vinyl stools since the late 90s. Adam slid into a back booth, the worn leather cracking under his weight. A few moments later, a twitchy, hollow-eyed man named Sly slid into the seat opposite him. Sly had been a reliable fixer during Adam's amnesiac days as Spider. "You brought the cash," Sly muttered, his eyes darting nervously toward the door. Adam slid a thick manila envelope across the sticky table. 10,000 unmarked. "Now give me the ledger, Sly, the one belonging to the Montalvo Associates." Sly pocketed the envelope and pushed a tattered, leather-bound notebook across the table. As Adam reached for it, a sudden, inexplicable chill ran down his spine. It was a visceral, primal instinct, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. Adam's eyes flicked to the cracked mirror behind the bar. Through the hazy reflection, he caught a glimpse of a broad-shouldered man in a dark, impeccably tailored suit, sitting 3 stools down, nursing a beer he wasn't drinking. The man's posture was too rigid, his gaze too focused on the reflection of Adam's booth. The paranoia immediately set in, wrapping around Adam's chest like a vice. He grabbed the notebook, shoved it into his jacket, and exited through the kitchen doors, leaving Sly counting the hundreds. The feeling of being shadowed only intensified as the desert sun dipped below the horizon, giving way to the blinding artificial daylight of the Strip. Adam had a second meeting lined up at a high-end pawn shop off Sahara Avenue, a place that dealt in black market information as much as it did in stolen Rolexes. But when he arrived, the iron security gates were pulled tightly shut. A crudely handwritten closed sign hung in the window. Adam cursed under his breath. He immediately dialed his contact's number on the burner phone, but the line was dead, disconnected. As he turned to walk back to his car, a massive, heavily tattooed bouncer stepped out from the shadows of the adjacent alleyway, blocking his path. "Shop's closed, buddy. Time for you to move along," the thug growled, crossing his tree trunk arms over his chest. "I have an appointment with the owner," Adam said, his voice dangerously calm, his fists clenching at his sides. Owner had a sudden change of heart, decided he doesn't want to do business with you, ever. The thug took a menacing step forward. "I suggest you take the hint and get on the first flight back to Wisconsin or wherever the hell you came from." Adam backed away slowly, his mind racing. Unexpected obstacles were suddenly springing up at every turn. Doors that had been wide open just hours ago were violently slamming shut in his face. His initial thought was that an old enemy had caught wind of his return to Vegas. Perhaps Billy Abbott had hired private investigators to tail him, hoping to dig up some fresh dirt to use in their never-ending feud. Or maybe this was the work of a rival gambling syndicate from his days as Spider, someone holding a long-standing grudge over a bad debt or a bruised ego. But as Adam navigated his rental car through the chaotic Vegas traffic, constantly checking his rearview mirror, the pieces of the puzzle began to shift into a far more sinister picture. He noticed the black SUV that had been trailing him for the last 4 miles. It stayed exactly 3 car lengths back, never closing the gap, never falling behind. The precision was military. Adam pulled into the sprawling parking garage of the Venetian Tires, squealing as he took the corners sharply. The black SUV mirrored his movements with flawless execution. Adam parked and quickly made his way toward the casino floor, taking note of the men who seamlessly fell into step behind him. They weren't street thugs, they weren't mob enforcers. They wore earpieces discreetly tucked behind their ears. Their suits were expensive, their haircuts sharp and disciplined. A cold, bitter realization washed over Adam, hitting him harder than a physical blow. This wasn't Billy Abbott. This wasn't some forgotten Vegas mobster. This level of sophisticated, highly coordinated interference had only one signature: the limitless resources, the ruthless efficiency, the absolute demand for control. The mustache Adam hissed under his breath, his jaw tightening so hard his teeth ached. His father, Victor Newman, was behind this. Victor had somehow discovered his secret trip and had dispatched his elite private security ring to thwart the investigation. The implications were staggering. If Victor was going to such extreme lengths to stop him spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy off informants and deploy black ops teams to the desert, it meant the secret Adam was chasing was real. And it was massive. Victor wasn't just being controlling, he was terrified. A dangerous game of cat and mouse commenced amidst the ringing slot machines and the cheering crowds of the casino floor. Adam knew he had to shake Victor's surveillance ring if he had any hope of deciphering the ledger he had purchased from Sly. He was no longer just fighting to uncover his past, he was fighting a proxy war against his father. Adam moved with the fluidity of a ghost through the labyrinthine casino. He deliberately waded into a massive drunken bachelorette party, using the chaotic sea of pink sashes and feathered boas as a visual shield. He glanced over his shoulder. Two of Victor's men in dark suits were aggressively pushing through the crowd, their eyes scanning the floor. Adam ducked behind a bank of blindingly bright penny slots and slipped into a restricted hallway marked Employees Only. He stripped off his distinctive charcoal blazer, tossing it over a laundry cart, and grabbed a discarded waiter's vest from a hook. Pulling his hair down over his forehead, he grabbed a tray of dirty champagne flutes and walked briskly back out onto the floor from a different exit. He passed within 3 feet of one of Victor's operatives, holding his breath, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The operative didn't even glance at the busboy. Adam slipped into a service elevator, swiping a key card he had lifted from the vest's pocket. As the metal doors slid shut, sealing him inside the steel box, he let out a long, ragged exhale. He had outsmarted his father's goons, dodging the intricate surveillance net, but he knew the victory was only temporary. Victor's men would recalibrate. They would lock down the exits. Adam needed a safe place to examine the ledger. He bypassed his comped high roller suite, knowing it was inevitably bugged by now, and headed down to the subterranean parking garage to retrieve his rental car and find a cheap motel off the strip. But as he stepped out of the stairwell into the dimly lit concrete cavern of the garage, a heavy hand slammed into his chest, shoving him violently against the cinder block wall. Adam grunted as the wind was knocked out of him. He looked up to see Vance, the ruthless head of Victor's Alpha security team, pressing a forearm against his throat. 2 other heavily armed operatives flanked him, blocking any avenue of escape. "End of the line," Adam Vance said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Your father wants you on the Newman jet heading back to Genoa City tonight." "Get your hands off me, Vance," Adam snarled, struggling against the pressure on his windpipe. The ledger was burning a hole in his inside pocket. If Vance searched him, the evidence would be confiscated and the truth would be lost forever. He was entirely cornered. He was on the absolute precipice of having his entire Vegas operation exposed and dismantled. "Hand over whatever you bought from the junkie at the dive bar," Vance demanded, his eyes narrowing. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." Adam's mind raced at 1,000,000 miles an hour. He had to bluff. He had to play the one card Victor's men wouldn't dare challenge. He forced a dark, mocking laugh, relaxing his body against the wall to project an air of total arrogant control. "You think my father knows everything," Adam sneered, his eyes locking onto Vance's. "You think I'm here digging up family secrets? I bought a ledger of illegal high-stakes poker debts. I'm setting up an underground syndicate to rival the Abbott's new casino venture. If you confiscate my property and ruin a multi-million-dollar business acquisition, Victor will have your head on a spike for costing him the chance to crush Jabot's gaming division." Vance hesitated. The operative knew the volatile, unpredictable dynamic between Victor and Adam. He knew Victor hated being kept in the dark, but he also knew Victor prized business dominance above all else. If Adam was telling the truth, ruining a corporate power play would be a fatal career move. Adam seized the microscopic moment of doubt. He violently shoved Vance's arm away and straightened his shirt, his eyes blazing with the signature, terrifying Newman fury. "Call my father, Adam," challenged, stepping aggressively into Vance's personal space. "Wake him up. Tell him you're interfering with my poker syndicate. See how he reacts." or back the hell off and let me do my job. The tension in the dimly lit garage was thick enough to choke on. For 10 agonizing seconds, no one moved. Finally, Vance took a half step back, gesturing for his men to lower their guard. "We're watching you, Adam. One wrong move and we drag you back to Genoa City in zip ties." Adam didn't look back as he walked to his rental car, though his hands were shaking so violently he could barely get the key into the ignition. He had survived the confrontation by the skin of his teeth, using the very corporate ruthlessness his father had taught him as a weapon against his father's own men. Driving out into the electric neon-lit night, Adam finally pulled over on a desolate stretch of road overlooking the glittering Vegas Valley. He killed the engine and sat in the suffocating silence of the desert. He pulled the tattered ledger from his pocket, his fingers tracing the worn leather binding. The close call in the garage hadn't deterred him. It had only poured gasoline on the raging fire of his determination. Victor had underestimated him. His father thought he could use intimidation money and brute force to keep the skeletons locked firmly in the Newman family closet, but Victor had forgotten who he was dealing with. He had forgotten that Adam was forged in the very same fires of deception and relentless ambition. Adam stepped out of the car, the warm desert wind whipping through his hair. He looked down at the sprawling, glittering city of sin, a city built on secrets, lies, and buried bodies. His eyes hardened, transforming into twin shards of black ice. "You want a war, old man," Adam whispered to the empty desert night, his voice trembling with a potent, dangerous mix of rage and absolute resolve. "You've got one." He gripped the ledger tightly in his fist. He didn't care about the surveillance. He didn't care about the alpha teams, the threats, or the immense, terrifying power of Victor Newman. Adam swore a silent, unbreakable vow under the Nevada stars. He was going to tear down the walls of his father's lies, brick by brick. He was going to find out exactly what happened in the dark corners of his past, no matter the cost, no matter the collateral damage. The investigation would continue, and when the truth finally came to light, nothing in Genoa City would ever be the same again.